Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Yes? Okay.
I feel like we're in the old days. Linda Dahl, Fairwood Road. I read the conflict of interest policy that you're doing for the first read, and I don't know legally, so I'm hoping I read it to what it's telling. I'm not sure. That's why it's kind of questions that I'm asking here. Does the conflict of interest policy include not-for-profit groups such as unions and political parties? This was and continues to be an issue with taxpayers, namely members of our school board holding jobs or positions with political parties and unions, which is perceived to be a direct conflict of interest when voting as a school board member. Being paid by another organization, whether it's profit or nonprofit, can influence you and your decisions. All of these conditions in this conflict of interest policy should apply to both categories, profit and nonprofit. Does it?
Well, we'll find out. Thank you. Any other public comment? No? Okay, policies to consider for a second read. 118. Have any comments, Dr. Christian? Is that?
No, I think we're clear on this one. We had some things we had to clear up last month, and I think they were all addressed. Go ahead.
I just had one comment on this. If you look under authority, the second paragraph, is that just trying to say that there can be one student or there can be a group of students? Because it's sort of, I don't quite understand the phrasing.
This is just for CSD. Yeah, that's fine.
Is it just trying to say courses of event study may involve a single student or a group of
It
students?
is. It does sound somewhat
Subject to board approval. I was thinking maybe we could just say that. So it may not be limited to participation by just say involve a single student or a group of students. Because I would imagine if a group of students came up with an independent study they wanted to do together and
Sure.
went through our procedures and it was approved, then that would be okay as well.
Maybe it should say get rid of the first not maybe limited to participation by a single student.
That's fine.
But
Yeah.
get involved with group of students.
Yeah, that works too.
Can you change that now?
I'm making it.
Okay.
I have PDFs up, but Sarah's going to
Yeah.
do all the edits as we move forward.
Any other comments on 118? No? Okay, 222, tobacco. I know Rosemary had asked about putting some warnings about the dangers of tobacco at the end of the policy or as an attachment. Do we do something like that, or is that not necessary?
Of course you could. It's not necessarily policy in and of itself to say the warnings. If that's the prerogative of the board, you may. Technically, I wouldn't call it necessarily policy to do that. So.
I think too that the policy is not necessarily directed to students.
Right, it's
Their handbook would be, or any other. So I don't know that it's something.
right. I think in a handbook that would probably make more sense to do that, or even just an email to the kids to let them know don't do
But I
this.
don't know that it needs to be in policy.
Dr. Christian, what do we do to discourage kids from using tobacco or smoking related products? Because I actually don't know the answer.
I actually don't.
We certainly have a reactive piece in each of our handbooks that details what the discipline is if students are. We'll obviously have tobacco-free campus and smoke-free campus. If they're in possession, they can be suspended from school. Obviously, what's more prevalent nowadays are vapes versus cigarettes or some other type of tobacco product. And the vapes obviously can deliver a variety of substances. That's the reactive side, which we're doing with all of our students. It's in the handbook, and then it's addressed at the beginning of every school year. Proactively, too, as part of our health curriculum, it is mentioned in several different areas, from when kids are in elementary school up to middle school, high school, obviously developmentally appropriate. And And then lastly, every year we participate in what's called the PACE survey, which is drug and alcohol survey for students in middle school and high school. It's done anonymously, and then we get that data that talks about how many kids have been exposed to it, have they been offered it by their friends, have they seen their parents involved, have they seen family members using drugs, alcohol, tobacco. And then we get that data and we use that, Mrs. Burke's office and Dr. McKinney's office, use that to help steer instructional decisions. Yeah, I think I talked with Mrs. Northcutt a little bit about this. Probably the biggest challenges, and I think PSBA does an excellent job with their policies and their model policies. They're probably not always as current with the trends that are happening, such as vaping is certainly the trend. I remember for years the electronic device policy for PSBA included beepers, long after beepers no longer were used, but it was all consuming. And so, I know Mrs. Northcutt mentioned putting in more about nicotine into this policy, and then also referencing it as, I'm going to make sure I say it correctly, instead of smoking-related products, it was related delivery products, and then that would encompass the vapes or jewels and the things that we see advertised. So I'm comfortable with those. The key is having the policy and then implementing it uniformly.
So, do you think we should change the name then, add delivery in?
I still would, we have tobacco, nicotine, and then Mrs. Northcutt, if she can hear me, can comment on related delivery products. I still think we should have the word smoking in there too. I just think a belt and suspenders approach is probably best here.
What do you think?
That's what I
So change it?
suggested was tobacco, nicotine, and related delivery products, because one of the big concerns is nicotine, and I suggested that a definition of nicotine be included in those definitions, and that wherever it says tobacco, frequently it'll just say tobacco and delivery products, but only say tobacco, nicotine, and or related delivery products. If some of those delivery products are not dealing with tobacco and are not dealing with what is seen as smoking.
Kathy, what do you think? Are you on the policy committee? Say change the title, or you?
I think it's good to do the belt and suspenders
To
as
change it?
Dr. Christian
Do you
said.
think that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. All right, we can add it.
Then another area under authority where it says, in the case of a student with a disability, including a student for whom an evaluation is pending, the district shall take all steps to comply. We use that phrase a lot, but we never say what we're referring to, and I think we add it in the case of a student with a disability, including a student for whom an evaluation is pending, violating this policy, comma. So when a student with a disability is violating the policy, then we need to be compliant with all of the requirements dealing with a student who has a disability.
That's fine. That would generally come into play when we're looking at if there's a suspension related to it, and the student with disability maybe has already accumulated a certain number of suspensions, which is capped. So we have a different set of rules that we have to follow for a student with an IEP. So we would do that the same if it was another policy that was violated. If the board's comfortable with those, I think these are fairly minor changes. It actually adds a little more meat to the policy. I think we still can put it on to the board agenda for June. I think it's important to have it approved prior to the beginning of next school year.
That makes sense to me. I think there's also, there's a paragraph under definition that needs to come out. The second paragraph, or at least it sort of says.
Oh, just that note.
Yeah,
It's just that note.
just that note, okay.
Oh. It's just an explanation of the
Got
compliance
it.
to find that.
Okay, got it. Oh, do we have administrative regulations on this?
Not presently, but we have, it's detailed what the discipline is in each of the student handbooks.
I had one other question. The last section about additional provisions, tobacco only, where it's talking about if the student is convicted of possessing or using tobacco in violation of the policy, according to the regulations, not our school district, but the court, the student can be fined $50. My question was, is there any state law currently related to nicotine and related delivery products similar or identical to this one about tobacco, or is that something that is under consideration by the state?
So far, it's just tobacco, Rosemary, that the state law is. I'm not aware that there's any pending legislation at the state level regarding this.
Is that $50 our number or the state number?
It's the state number. That's all coming from state statute.
Is it possible, do we want to not put the number in there, but say according to state policy, so that as the number changes, the policy stays intact?
We can't, this hasn't changed for a very long time.
It's been $50 and
it's been there way for a while, and it doesn't look like it's gained any steam or traction to change it.
Okay.
But I certainly can.
No, I just generally don't like to see specific numbers because they can change and then the policy is antiquated just for the $50. So,
Yes.
but if it's been that way for years and we don't see any
I don't see any movement on this, but.
Any,
And it makes it sound as if the student is convicted of possessing or using tobacco in violation of this policy. Is it only in violation of our school district policy that this happens?
Right, so it is if the state law is violated. So that's what a student would have to be convicted in court of violating the state law. So I
mean, we can impose fines.
right, no, we are not imposing fines.
No,
We
our
cannot.
practice is we issue, the summons is issued, and then our discipline is immediate, and then eventually the student would appear in front of the magistrate.
Yeah, and
So
I'm
that
not
could be a month
sure
later.
that that's clear in here.
Yeah, I just removed the in violation of our policy part.
Yeah, I was wondering,
Yep.
Thank
is the violation for like underage use of tobacco, or is it using tobacco on school grounds?
On school grounds.
On school grounds. Okay, that makes sense.
so if there's no other discussion, in a related subject matter, but outside the policy, it looks like there's a potential vape shop that's going up in White Marsh. It's going in front of, I believe, their planning commission, if I got it correctly. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to forward, even though it's not adopted, their meetings before our monthly meetings, so I'd like to forward this policy to all the White Marsh supervisors.
Yeah.
And let them know that this is what we're doing, and that it's time to hopefully them making a decision that would be not favorable for a vape shop.
I can go before the supervisor next Thursday.
Right. So you can forward this policy to them.
Certainly.
All right, excellent.
Anything else on 222? No. 827, conflict of interest.
So, Mr. Chair, we recently had, and while this is a fairly comprehensive policy, about 4 pages, we recently had our Title I audit, so we received funds from the state annually under Title I, and one of the recommendations from the auditor who came in was to update Policy 827, so we accelerated this in the process. I know we've been in the 100s and getting close to the 200s, so that's exactly what we did. I know there was some question, Mr. Northcutt sent an email about possibly separating this policy and having a separate one for board members versus employees. I think this is, we should go through it, each page, and have a healthy discussion about it. While I certainly appreciate her point, my opinion would be to keep 827 as encompassing both employees and board members. And then when we get to the 3s, 4s, and 5s, which are professional employees, support employees, and administrative employees, if we want to do something there for employees separate from this, we could investigate doing that as well. But and we do have a phone call into PSBA, and we didn't hear back yet, Dave.
No, we did, and they concur with you that
We did
the
hear back.
policy to cover board members and employees.
Okay, well, this doesn't affect the policy, but under definitions of that, the his, her, she, he, can we do like just a general neutral there instead of those? And that's throughout the policy. And then down, where it says financial interest, more than
The only
5%.
challenge, just to be, from a grammatical perspective,
Mhm.
it would be using the plural, that's all, I'm sorry.
Well, I looked it up, and
Okay.
there's a way you can do it. And it had different examples, and there was.
It doesn't change the meaning.
Doesn't change the meaning, but we'll, Sarah can do more research on
I will put my grammar book away.
that. And financial interest, it says 5%, is that like a standard, 5%?
That's part of the State Ethics Act.
Yeah, okay. And under honorarium, it says tokens. The term does not include tokens presented. What do they mean by that? Which is like a gift or
Just a synonym for gift.
synonym for a gift?
Yes.
Something's
Like a pen,
de
like a
minimis.
token of,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for coming to speak at our club. Here's a
Oh,
pen.
Right.
Right there under honorarium, what does it mean non-public, occupational, or professional in nature?
Response from PSBA to that question, their sample was if someone may be teaching at a post-secondary institution or a private university.
Anybody? Okay, so my next question is under guidelines. Employees shall be provided with a copy of this policy and acknowledged in writing. Is that something that we do?
We have not. I don't believe we have. I can tell you that at the beginning of the school year, we started this this past September. There were about, policy book is quite lengthy. There were about 12 to 15 policies that I've asked the principals to go over at the beginning faculty meeting that they have when the teachers are in for the first, and support staff are in for the first few days before the kids arrive. So we certainly can add that, and I think since we have electronic access to this, what we do is we show all the faculty members and support staff a list of policies, we put them up on the screen, and then we have a sign-off sheet that they attended, so that, for example, we did the harassment policy this year. So if we have an employee who feels that they're being harassed by another employee, if it gets to my level and we have a potential discipline situation, the first thing I say was, were you in attendance on August 28th? Did you review the harassment policy? Did you sign off that you were in attendance at the meeting? And so that's our check for that. And so we certainly can do that here as well.
So do you want to keep that in here then, acknowledged in writing? Or do you don't think that needs to be in there?
No, I think when they sign in for each meeting, that's the acknowledgement.
Right.
Dr. Christian, could you just, out of curiosity, you maybe include in board notes what those policies are that you ask everyone to look at the beginning of the year?
Absolutely.
I'm just curious
Yeah,
as
I
to
would be
which ones you
curious to
picked
see
out.
it. Yeah.
Sure. Many are HR related, but there are some obviously related to children's safety.
Right, devices.
Absolutely.
Texting, emails?
Yeah, mandated reporting,
Right,
appropriate communications, and then anything.
yeah. I'm just curious to see which ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, there were about.
I'm not going to second guess you, just would like to see.
Does the district utilize an electronic EC where they have, it automatically pops up in their to-do list, or they have to read a policy and acknowledge that they read it? Like on an ongoing, continuous basis for, like you said, HR issues?
Sure.
This could be part of that program.
We certainly have that capability. We also use something called GCN. So when we have.
What's GCN?
I
didn't put you on the spot.
Yeah, another acronym.
Another acronym in this industry.
Yeah, that's the name of the company.
Oh, it's a
And so it's a compliance company.
compliance
So
company.
we
yes.
load in our policies into that, and then they turn them into, they have little tutorials on it.
Right.
So I'll use sexual harassment as one. Everybody watches that, and then we take the quiz at the end. We have to pass the quiz.
Right.
And that's our acknowledgement.
All within that platform, that electronic platform.
Yes.
EC.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, we've done, and then we provide time, either during those in-service days at the beginning of the year, or if there's an update throughout the year, we find a time for each school. We give them a window of time for which it has to be done. And then anybody who doesn't do it, we have to go make a visit, or say, hey, you're down to, we visit the principal and say, hey, you've got 80% of your staff, you need to go, rattle some cages and get the last 20% done. So we don't do the automated email that you're talking about, but we have that capability that we could.
And right now, policies are not in this. The envision policies being in this. Or are they? I'm going to go a little turn around.
So the GCN is
Yes.
they're the canned presentations, and so when we call the company, when we renew our subscription, we can say, here are the 10 to 15 policies that we're emphasizing. Do you have a presentation on this? And they generally do. If they don't, they'll create one for us.
Okay.
And then they have to, when you're in the system, like I do it, I have to do it too. You go in and you click and you sign your name
Right.
electronically, and then you're done.
Okay.
And then the other stuff we do, if GCN doesn't have it, we cover it at the beginning. Leticia and I sat down with Peter, and we said, here are the 10 policies that we want to review. Is there anything else you think we should do from a personnel standpoint at the beginning of the year with all of our employees? And then there's stuff that happens when the laws get passed, right? And whether it's, Act 168 or mandated reporting or health-related things that just sometimes they occur in November or December, and we put a plan together. And generally, the state's actually pretty good about saying, hey, you need to get this done within this window, 6 months or a year or something like that.
It's safe to tell.
Sure.
Mr. Mary, as I wanted to say, one of the things that's so important here is it's not just the staff who is going to be signing off and they've read and understood, it's also the board members. And I was, in the questions I submitted, I asked who's going to be reviewing the complete sign-off, where are the sign-off sheets going to be stored, and should there be a set time period which defines when a board member or an employee needs to review the policy again and create a new sign-off? Is this going to be something you sign off once and that's the end of it?
Well, I think for board members, similar to the disclosure of financial interests, it should be my office that collects all those forms and then has them available as needed.
I would even say we could do it at the same time. The
Sure.
disclosure of financial interest gets circulated, and then with a copy of this policy in place to sign off, acknowledging that we reviewed the policy. If that works for Mr. Sherman.
Well, sure. PSBA's response to that was that anything basically related to the sign-off sheet wouldn't go into a policy necessarily, but would be part of the min-regs.
And I just wanted to go back to the other definition that I had submitted. It's the definition of immediate family. Immediate family can be a parent, parent-in-law, spouse. And domestic partners are recognized for other people, but not for the individual, the employee, or the board member. And I think we should have spouse / domestic partner wherever spouse appears.
You okay with that? We will do that, Rosemary.
Great.
So another question, where it says valued at $500 or more, Sue had said it's not good to have a number in there. Is that like the other situation where it really just should be in there, $500?
Is that a
it up to
federal?
us?
Is
Looks
that
like an
a-
ethics act requirement.
Oh,
from the
it's
state.
not-
Is that
so
state
it's not
or
at
federal?
discretion.
It's under
State
guidelines.
standards and conduct. There needs to be a number in there of some sort, I think.
Well, it could be, it could also,
Well, but there, we wouldn't.
Jen,
we wouldn't
where-
know
where-
the
can you
It's
threshold.
under
direct us?
guidelines.
Yeah.
I think
Oh, no, it's under
yeah,
disclosure
it's-
financial interest.
It's
sorry.
it's in the law, that's why it's taken
Oh,
straight
then
from
it's-
the code.
yeah.
So we do, okay.
I had a quick question about I know you said this was about Title I was the initiation of this, but in a couple places it talks about federal statutes or federal law. I'm trying to find a spot, I read it twice, but now I can't find it, hold on.
In standards of conduct, the paragraph above the one we were looking at talks about it.
And I'm just wondering, does that direct it only to federal award, or does that cover everything? I mean, it says supported by a federal award, but shouldn't it be any?
It's the second paragraph under standards of conduct.
Thank you, I'm looking.
It was in two places. Should have highlighted, but my iPad doesn't like a highlighter. At least I don't know how to use it.
Well, that's coming right from the federal.
Right,
It
that's
looks
what
to
I'm
me
saying.
We're sort of taking from both state and federal law.
I understand, but my point is, should it be more all-inclusive than just federal? Or does anything that's federal, Sarah, therefore does that rise above anything that's state or local?
So I wouldn't say it rises above it, I say they're separate, right? So I think the one paragraph, the first paragraph that you're referring to is specific, and we want to keep that word for word because that's parroting exactly what the law
Okay.
says. Then the paragraph after that is where we have that threshold, which is also from state law. So, I mean, I think that theoretically you could make it stricter and make it a value of $0 and have a, instead of a $500 or more. But it's up to, it's up to the board to make that decision.
No, I wasn't questioning the number.
Mhm.
I'm questioning more the use of the word federal law as opposed to just any
Award.
award. Or federal award, it says. Right. So.
By using the
so
word federal, it implies that it might be acceptable with some other
if it were
federal-
state or
Right.
county or local, yes. That's what I'm
Should you
trying to say,
federal
thank
or
you.
state award? I don't know the answer to that. There's got to be a
can't.
reason to have it in there.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, what's an example of,
The Title I.
That's why I meant, is it just say federal because we're talking Title I?
that's why that paragraph is in there specifically. It's to address Title I.
right,
So.
But we're using this to address even more than just Title I. So my question is, does this just cover federal and therefore we're kind of like leaving the rest out?
So that paragraph is talking about, let's just limit to board members. No board member can participate in a selection, administration of a contract that's supported by a federal award if there's,
Right.
right, if there's a potential conflict of interest, right? If there's that financial benefit. Then I look at the second paragraph saying the district can't enter into contract with anything else, anybody
Okay.
else, if it's gonna be $500 or more.
That's
So
fine. That's the way you read it.
That's how I read it, is that's what it covers, the everything else that's.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So where it says, when advertised, formal bidding is not required or used, Number 2, a reasonable amount of time. Who decides the reasonable amount of time? Would that be the
I
superintendent?
think the, or designate.
Does that need to go in there, or you think it's okay without it?
I think it's fine.
Okay. And the next paragraph where it says, in a written statement to be attached to the board minutes, is that something that we've done, or have we ever had to do that?
Is that,
Well,
we've
anytime a
done,
board member abstains, they have to fill out.
right, we have to fill
So
out
that
a
there's,
form.
my question is that what we actually do? Okay.
In the next paragraph, no board member shall and no non-teacher school district employee who's authorized to take official action, shall accept an honorarium. Now, does that only refer to times when they are acting as a board member of the district or an employee?
I'd say it's outside of those times, it's at any time, assuming the person's currently a board member or non-teacher.
And who all is covered under non-teacher?
Your administrators. All back 93. I guess, but it would have to meet the other requirements within the policy too, right? It's not something, if it's totally, completely outside, you're not acting as, you know, it's the summer and you get an honorarium for, you know,
Being a great coach.
being, yeah, exactly. $501 for being. Wouldn't happen in this case, I'm definitely not a good coach.
Could you repeat that a little bit louder?
Not sure it's worth it. I would think that the other standards of the policy have to be met too, or the other constraints of the policy have to be met too. Not, we just can't look at that one in isolation, that paragraph.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Part of,
So under improper influence, that first paragraph, I don't think it needs, the meaning should be changed, but it's really wordy and it's kind of written strange. And I don't think offerer is a word. I looked it up.
what word?
Offerer, it
Oh.
wasn't,
It's a legal term of art.
it wasn't in dictionary.com. So, I mean, that would be whatever Sarah.
I'm thinking this is taken straight from the code, because that's, right, because they don't look like real words, which means that they're in legislation.
So then we
statute
keep it.
somewhere.
We just have to keep it the way it is.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
make sure, I'm looking for the exact paragraph to make sure it lines up to what the
Okay.
law is.
And from where this is in our policy manual, it seems like this really is focused on conflicts of interest vis-a-vis sort of contracting and the school district as a business. I mean, I think there are other potential conflicts of interest that could occur that probably don't deal as directly with contracting. I'm thinking about hiring, for instance. That's not really mentioned in here, that's not addressed. If Dr. Christian wanted to hire his brother, if you even have a brother, I don't know. But that would be, you know, that may be something where there's a conflict of interest. That would be something we want a policy on, but I don't know if this is the right spot, given this seems like it's dealing more with sort of the contracts that.
We would probably should develop a nepotism.
Nepotism policy, yeah, and that's fine.
I'd hire my sister, not my brother.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Rosemary?
Reading this first sentence, this is where I thought it might be good to separate into two policies just so things would make more sense. Because employee is stuck in between board member and then two other elements that become a board member. So employee should either go first, or a board member, nominee, or candidate for the board should be together.
Under improper influence, Rosemary?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That's
and it appear again. where employees get stuck between board member and then nominee or candidate for the board.
Okay, we
I
can,
just think there's a lot of confusion.
That makes sense.
we can make that change right now.
Done.
One more question. Yeah, down in reporting, usually everything says superintendent or designee. This just says superintendent. Do you want to add or designee, or because of the subject matter, keep it just superintendent?
I believe it should stay superintendent.
Okay,
I agree.
Yeah, these are.
yeah, right, because of what it is. And just for the record, there's a ton of typos that Sarah can look at on her own. Don't have to be discussed right now. Is that right, Dr. Christian?
That's correct.
Okay.
We'll have, between Sarah and myself, and then we'll clean it up. This is still consideration for first read
Mhm.
anyway, so we'll
Okay.
talk about it later in the summer as well.
Sarah, just to clarify, Mrs. Dolly asked a question. The way you read this doesn't include everything in terms of businesses, nonprofits. Is everything that could be considered individuals,
Right.
covered by this policy?
Right, so the conflict of interest, it's if you, any potential conflict, right? So
Anything.
Anything.
Okay.
So, and I think things are well defined in the policy. I think that they went through, I think this is a combination of PSBA taking things from federal law, state law, and I reviewed it as well, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? for now?
Under organizational conflict, the 4 items that are numbered, it really feels as if the work is involved. So it starts with such a likelihood exists which will not disqualify the related organization. However, the following measures shall be applied. And the first one is in the future, it's supposed to be shall be applied, then the organizational relationship shall be disclosed. Should everything be in the future, so any district employees or officials directly involved shall be excluded. A competitive bid or other basis evaluation will be considered, and the board will determine if contracting with the related organization is in the best interest of the program involved.
I'm wondering if this is taken directly from the federal regulations, which it's possible.
Right.
And if it is, we should probably keep the language that's in the regulations, even if it's inelegant as here, and resist the urge to correct it, if only because it's probably the kind of thing that auditors look for, including federal program auditors, to make sure you have the language is exactly the same as the regulations for whatever reason.
So we will verify if it's in federal guidelines, and if it is, we will keep it as is. If not, we will use the same tense.
Yes.
Did you hear that, Rosemary?
Yeah, I'm just looking because usually when something's taken right from something, you have the footnote. So, I'll just take a look at it. Hopefully it can be corrected because it isn't clearly written.
So my question, I feel like we're sort of going back to the same dead horse, but under investigation. So if there is someone who has claimed a violation and an investigation would be happening, well, first of all, who would do the investigation? If a board member was to tell the superintendent that they think there has been a conflict of interest, who does the investigating? How does it actually get executed? And then my next question is, because the second paragraph is, it's just in particular to a federal grant or group of federal grants. So if that's the case, then it's not really reflecting that second paragraph that we referenced above, that we were sort of inferring that it included everything else. I just want to know what's the practice then? What would happen?
In my experience, there's been two avenues that take place. One would be the initial investigation is done by the non-voting member of the board, which is the superintendent's office. If, depending upon the level of concern, I've had experience where we hired an independent firm to come in and then validate or substantiate the initial investigation, or then do additional investigations. And then that way, it's a separate entity that comes in and does all the interviews and then releases a report.
And that obviously is going to cost the district money.
It would. I had a case many years ago, and I was not the superintendent, I was the assistant at the time, but there was an investigation, and without getting into the details of it, the board elected to hire an attorney from outside, not the current solicitor, and they came in and did about a week or two's worth of work, and then issued a report on it.
Okay. So do we need to be concerned that the second paragraph of investigation only refers to federal? Do we need to elaborate on that so that it matches the second paragraph above? Under, where was it under?
Could we be as simplistic as to add a sentence so that we had, like Adam said, the wording that the federal auditors are looking for, but then put a sentence below that said this same investigation would apply to any non-federal issues or something? Legalese. Do you know what I mean?
I'm working on something in my head here. So, if there's a violation of the policy in another, I mean, like the feds require you to if you find something out, you got to report it to them, right? I'm not aware that there's a requirement for a report in any other way.
Okay.
So I guess that's a decision if.
Well, I feel like I want to look through like the code of ethics that we have or that the state has, because especially with regard to board members, if there was a board member that would vote on something that was a conflict of interest, where is the power of
Right, and there's
board?
limited powers on what certain things can happen, right? Because there's specific laws regarding elected officials and how people can remain in office and be removed from office and things like that.
Right.
And then on the other hand, if you're looking at an administrator, right, that voted on this, pushed a contract with somebody, then there's all sort of employment rules that we need to look at and make sure that we're not putting anything in policy that that would be violating a different law. So I need to look into that if I can.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I just ask them to use their mics because we can't hear?
Oh my goodness, I thought it was on. Sorry.
Yeah, and I don't know for the state if there are provisions where you have to report something to the Pennsylvania Department of Education or the Auditor General or something like that, but we obviously have to make sure that we're complying with whatever the state guidance was.
Anybody have any other questions? No?
We'll get clarity on that, since there was some discussion on that before bringing it forward for the first read.
Okay, any public comment?
Oh, bye, Rosemary.
Should I wait for Rosemary to come down?
I don't think so.
Okay, so my question with this policy is like how, once you implement it, is any of it like retroactive? In other words, if you find something that might have happened earlier this year or last year, does this policy take effect or like what?
My experience is with any policy that becomes permanent board policy is it's moving forward with the adoption of the policy.
Okay.
Support. Yes. Do we have something now? Do we have a conflict of interest policy now?
There is.
Yeah, should we?
There is.
It's in the
there is
ethics.
something now.
Was it?
That's a very good question. Did all Fairwood Road? I heard you say that this does include nonprofits, and I guess I'm still a little concerned that it's not spelled out with that, because when you look under the definitions, and again, I can only understand, half of the sentence I'm about to tell you. When it says financial interest, it just says engaged in business for profit. And I don't know why it just doesn't say for-profit and nonprofit. I just think since this is going to be used for more than meeting your Title I requirements, this is like a whole policy for the life, that it just can't spell things out clearer. It's just my comment there. But I was hoping to comment. Thank you very much, Felix, for bringing that up about doing with the Board of Supervisors in White Marsh and the shop. I'm trying to fight that. I don't know that I'm going to win because a lot of people, which is true, you have a business, you should be able to have a business. But I've just been reading tons of articles within this last month about vaping and how dangerous it is. And this shop is going to be 40% vapes. And even though the owners say, that they're going to do the legal thing, that it's only 18 years old, you see that even that jewel company is trying to raise the age to 21. And kids, you guys more than anyone know that their brains are not developed. And they will get somebody else to buy it for them. That is the biggest problem with this. It's not that the shop itself is they won't sell to underage kids. It's that somebody else is going to be buying it for them. And we just don't need that in White Marsh so close to the high school. So I really appreciate that you're going to draft that letter to the Board of Supervisors. And just for your information, because I have been going to all the meetings about this, the Planning Commission did vote it down. 4 against, 1 for thinking that it's a business. And they're only an advisory group. So anything you can write to the Board of Supervisors from the school district, I think will have an impact, and I appreciate it.
Sorry, Chris, I've seen it for I did it myself earlier. I also have a question about the vaping and in the comment as well. You guys, I had asked you, what do we tell our kids about? They know that it's wrong. The kids already know that it's wrong. They're sneaking it. They know that, they're doing it trying to, be incognito, hiding in the bathrooms or under stairwells or behind corners where they can't be seen. So they're very well informed. And my question is, so I hear from my kids in the high school that it's actually a really big problem. And to the point where it's kind of sad, but they kind of joked about the teachers in the east wing, the 3-story wing, like they kind of have like a competition, how many kids can they catch in the bathrooms. Like they joke, not the teachers joke, but the kids joke about it. It seems like they do. And how do you feel that it's an issue that we are able to control with the means that we already have, or do you think that it's still kind of a little bit more of a problem than what, obviously we'd love to see nobody doing it.
Sure.
But these are kids who are knuckleheads, brains haven't developed, et cetera, that they're always trying to like beat the system or go around. But I just know that if my kids notice it, they're like it definitely is a problem, and I know that you guys are always addressing it.
It is pervasive in not just at our high school, but in high school, public and private high schools in the area. I have a high schooler myself, and we have very candid conversations. I talked to 2 police officers today, one from this area, one from outside, and they explained that it is pervasive in and out of school. We'll always have the reactionary piece where we catch somebody in the stairwell, you catch somebody in the bathroom. Much like in the 1990s when I was assistant principal and it was cigarettes. So it has to be that dual effort of being proactive and having it embedded in our curriculum and teaching children at that young age about the harmful effects. And we don't take it lightly. I was just talking with Dr. Bacani about it the other day. I said it does seem like it's becoming more pervasive. And our data shows that it is. And it doesn't help that the products are marketed in the fashion that they are, that it's shiny, it's
flavored.
Yeah, absolutely, and so it's certainly a challenge, but we will continue to be vigilant. But that combination, you always are going to have the reactive piece, you always will. And it's more concealed now too.
Right.
It looks like the jewels that look like a
pen.
yeah, or
Like the flash drive.
the memory sticker, the flash drive. Yeah, I couldn't think of the word. So I talked to my son, the fact that he said, "Oh, Dad, yeah, Dad, it's everywhere." And my neighbors' kids go to a private school in the area, and they said it's pervasive there too. I think the fact that it can be more concealed makes it a challenge.
And it's not one of those things that we can search because we think they have it, we have to actually see them with it. Is that how that works for?
No, we have some latitude under the in loco parentis rules to, if there's an odor, if there's a student appears to be under the influence, we have a little more latitude. So it's not, it is something that we can search based on suspicion. We have a little more latitude within the high school setting or middle school setting, because essentially during that day, we are in charge of not just that child, but the other 1,500 kids that are in the building.
So I have just one more question too. So outside of our buildings, like on Victory Fields, we have other groups coming in the baseball fields and the football fields. Is that also like no vaping, no like?
Absolutely.
Do we have the resources to really like enforce that when you have it at night? It's dark, and
Certainly a challenge. Are there people that are doing it when usually it starts like this, right? They look here, there, and then okay, nobody's around. I spoke to somebody the other day who parked in the back lot for a track meet and got out and was vaping, and I said, "You put that away?" And the response I got was, "I hope you enforce that for everybody." And I said, "Well, I'm enforcing it right now." And I said, "So I'm not sure it matters if where else you need to see me enforcing it, because we certainly do." Had a construction worker when I first came to the district who was at one of the elementary schools. We were putting the additions on, and we kicked him off the job site. And he's like, "You want this project done?" I said, "More importantly, I want you to follow our rules. He needs to be off the job site."
how far is off the, just out of curiosity, since we have all this construction on, how far is off the, like it's so many?
They need to be done working and then
Okay.
leave our campus. So
Okay.
in my old district, I had employees, the IU was using one of our facilities, and the aides at lunchtime would walk across the street and catch a break. And that's a choice they're making, but not on our campus. So,
And then the last comment I want to make, so my son Ben, who is 20 now, but had a brain injury in February, and that's not my point. My point is that when we went back to a neurosurgeon follow-up, they go through the whole thing. You're restricted on this, you can't do this, you can't do this, and you can't smoke, you can't be in the drugs and all that stuff. And so I asked, what about juuling or vaping? And the doctor actually said that they're still out there trying to gather evidence, and because they don't know, like they say it's not good for you, but they can't say that you're completely restricted yet. Like the doctors are still having like an issue with coming up with developing a policy on what to tell their patients, because it's how complicated it is.
and there's advertisements for holistic oils and essential oils and the benefits thereof. And I'm not an expert in it, but I've had parents say to me, "There's no harmful effects depending upon what you are using it for." And so, if they have a holistic approach, or it's an interesting conversation, and they're not permitted on campus.
And the last thing is, I know you heard in the news where there was a kid that brought in brownies to like elementary kids, and a bunch of them got like nine-year-olds got sick. Like,
Yeah, it happened about 2 months ago. I remember reading about that.
Right. So I don't know if it's like the kids are even aware that could happen.
So that's where I'm gonna, all of your points I think are spot on in how I feel. I think a lot of this needs to come from parenting and from how our schools educate the youth before they choose to juul. So let's not, yes, we still want to catch them, but we want to make them make the choice to not do it. So maybe that's an opportunity at one of our public meetings for someone to speak to what kind of education we provide, particularly at the middle school and the high school levels, of why not to. I mean, obviously say no to drugs, say no to smoking, but what are we doing with regard to juuling? And what kind of communications are we sending home to parents with, you know what, I don't want to start making fourth graders afraid to eat brownies that someone brings in for a birthday, but at the same time, making sure parents are aware of what, if their kid is bringing in something kind of thing. So I just think education and prevention would be a whole lot easier to do than try to find someone who's doing something that doesn't smell and you can't see. I think it's a really impossible job for us to be giving our administration sometimes.
I appreciate that. It does, the proactive piece is definitely something we all want to focus on. And when we do the reactive thing, or for example, when we brought the dogs in before the kids went to Florida, you know, even when you do that, the goal is not to catch kids.
Right.
The goal is to keep the harmful things off our campus. We certainly acknowledge that there's 18 other hours in the day, or 15 other hours in the day where kids have to make choices.
Which the parents are paying attention.
So the goal is to keep the campus clear of those things.
So tobacco is part of the, regular part of the curriculum.
Thank you, Chris.
Is vaping a regular part of the curriculum yet? Or it's still
I know the middle
new?
school had a presentation on it.
Yeah.
Assembly.
Assembly.
Not part of it, yeah, but it wasn't part of classroom.
Correct.
Curriculum, yeah.
But it was a full, but I think that's just.
Curriculum covers
Something.
drugs,
Start those
a variety of drugs, variety of alcohol, tobacco. So that would be encompassed with vaping and what you would put in the vape. And then we brought in a variety of speakers. Anywhere, Bryn Mawr Rehab comes in. Cruising Not Boozing is a great one for the high school before prom season. We have several student groups that are very proactive with it. And the kids know. That's who you have to speak to. The kids know. And the assistant principals know too. You know, they know what's going on. But the vaping piece is going to become, I think, one of our biggest challenges in the next. It already is, but over the next 3 to 5 years. You know, when we interview health and PE teachers as potential candidates, I always ask them as one of my questions, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing our adolescents today? And for years I've heard childhood obesity, which certainly is one, but now candidates are starting to say at the job fairs, vaping and legalization of some things. You know, it's educating kids about what is available to them. And think about the access they have, whether it's a shop they can walk to, the internet, friends, family members. The access is undoubtedly there, undoubtedly there.
And they don't see it waning. This isn't a trend that they see waning anytime soon.
No,
You're saying, no, wow. Okay.
Does anybody have any other comments?
Just for the record, one thing I brought up about the conflict of interest policy, we do have one currently.
Oh, you do?
So yes, there is one currently, which I suspected. So this is just sort of updating that. It was adopted September 15, 2016. And we probably had one before that too.
Not very comprehensive.
Yeah, it has a lot of benefits, yeah.
Passed it. I hope it was.
Anything else? Okay, meeting is adjourned.